Part 66. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 651. After sighing, he quickly displayed his fox characteristics and began to think about the causes and consequences of the matter. Yao Yao, he frowned and said, with a thoughtful expression on his face, our affairs only made progress after the Lord returned to the great Zhou dynasty last year. Your father should not have the ability to predict the future. I have also asked my mother and concubine about this. Xian Yuanyao said in a brisk tone. Before Her Majesty the Queen ascended the throne, I went to the imperial capital with my father to pay homage to the new emperor. After that, my father returned to Huainan alone, and I was left in the imperial capital by the Lord. At that time, my father guessed that it was more likely that I would continue to stay in the imperial capital. In order to train a general for the Huainan palace to guard the border, my father and my mother decided to have another one after discussion, so my brother was born. Xiejin was silent for a moment, with a strange expression on his face. Your father is probably not sure that this baby will be a son after birth. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows. My father is very open-minded and did not say that he must be a son. Even if the son is useless, the daughter can also guard the border. Don't you think Chu Hongii is still a heroine? After a pause, it's just that my sister has been spoiled since she was a child, is unruly and willful, and can't bear hardships. Moreover, she is already 16 years old, and at the age of leaving the court, it is too late to train her, so she can only create a new child. Regardless of whether the child is male or female, the father intends to train the child according to the standards of a military commander. Xiejin understood what he meant and hummed softly, so King Huainan has no idea of passing military power to men rather than women. That's not really true. Xian Yuanyao frowned and shook his head. I can only say that the next best thing is to have children. Under the premise of having children, boys must be able to endure hardships, endure wear and tear, and have more physical strength. Advantages. Although Chu Hongii is powerful, how many women in the world can be as powerful as Chu Hongii? Moreover, sons are the ones who inherit the incense. No matter how enlightened a father is, he would not first think of letting his daughter inherit the family business and pass on the incense, except in special circumstances. For example, Her Majesty the Queen today. Xiejin nodded. Yao Yao is right. Regardless of whether he settles for the next best thing or not, he feels that King Huainan is definitely an enlightened father. If he can accept that he and Yao Yao are together, he will be even more enlightened. As for this new child, whether it was a mistake or an unexpected surprise, no matter what the reason was that gave him the opportunity to come into this world, Xiejin was truly happy for it. Although the existence of this child is not the reason for Xian Yuanyao to be upright and deviant, nor is it the confidence for him to choose to cut off his sleeves, but it can at least alleviate Xian Yuanyao's guilt for not being able to continue his bloodline, and he can inherit the responsibility and family business of the Huainan palace. There will be successors at the border gate, so that the king of Huainan will not have any regrets. That's enough. If there are only two people, my sister and I will definitely inherit the Huainan prince's family business and military power in the future. It is impossible for my father to consider my sister, Xian Yuanyao said, frowning slightly, but the situation is different now. Even if we leave you and the leaving aside my affairs, my father has already thought that I might stay with the Lord as a servant in the future, so he has to consider the military power of the Huainan palace. It is too late to start training from my sister, and it is best to have another one. Fortunately, my father, the queen, and my concubine are still young. If it takes a few years, even if they want to have children, it will be impossible. After hearing this, Xiejin nodded in agreement, but he still couldn't help but sigh in his heart. King Huainan was really foresighted. Xian Yuanyao thought for a while. Ajin, I have an idea. Xiejin raised his eyes. What? I want to give up the position of crown prince to my younger brother. Xian Yuanyao's expression was slightly restrained, and his expression was more serious than ever before. My younger brother has inherited the blood and hope of the Huainan palace and shouldered the important task of guarding the border. It is natural that he should enjoy the title of crown prince. Honor. Xiejin was silent for a moment. I respect any decision you make, but you should discuss this matter with your father. I have no right to make decisions for you. He understood Yao Yao's thoughts. If he could not pass on the incense and responsibility of the Huainan palace, he should not keep and enjoy the title and honor of the crown prince. It was natural for him to give it to his younger brother. But the decision-making power on this matter does not lie with other people, but with King Huainan. And it also requires the consent of Her Majesty the Queen and the Prince Regent. Xian Yuanyao has already thought of 100 ways to be kind to his brother, and he doesn't mind putting his plans into words. I must be nice to my brother. Xiejin hummed, let's treat him well together. This newly born little prince is a blessing to both of them and must be loved by them wholeheartedly. The two looked at each other for a while and suddenly laughed. There's one more thing. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows lightly. I think my father will not do anything to us again. How to say? Although you blocked the punishment for me, you should know that we are now in the Huainan palace, on my father's territory. All the soldiers in the palace only obey the orders of my father. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows. Your identity as the 9th master of the Xie family has no effect here. If my father really wants to take action, he can just ask a few guards to pull you away and beat his son into a meat pie. The atmosphere was quite serious originally, but the word meat pie made Xiejin laugh out loud instantly. Yao Yao. Xian Yuanyao frowned. Why are you laughing? I was wondering what Yao Yao would look like after turning into a piece of meat pie. Xiejin pretended to think. Yao Yao is the heir apparent, so why not call him persimmon cake? Xian Yuanyao had a bad expression. Yao Yao is right. Xiejin nodded slowly. No matter how powerful my martial arts are, I will never dare to fight with your father. If he really wants to beat you, he only needs to order the guards to pull me away. If 2 people are not enough, then 4 people will do it. If 4 people are not enough, then 8 people will do it. Even if I beat you into a dried persimmon, I can only watch helplessly. Xiejin Xian Yuanyao's voice was a little more dangerous. Do you want to be beaten again? Yao Yao. Xiejin lay on the pillow, his voice soft, as if he was acting coquettish. I am injured now. Xian Yuanyao's heart twisted, and he stopped talking immediately. Getting up to check his injuries, Xian Yuanyao sat on the edge of the bed and gently massaged Xiejin's shoulders and neck. I guess someone should have written a letter in advance and told my father about the 2 of us. Xiejin hummed. Who do you think it is? My lord. Xiejin said, maybe my father. Xian Yuanyao frowned. If it was Prime Minister Xie, what would he say? I don't know. Maybe he would propose marriage directly? But even if the marriage proposal is true, it cannot be said so, lest Yao Yao start to assert his authority as a husband again. Xiejin was injured in his buttocks, and there was nothing wrong with his shoulders and neck, but for the time being he could only lie still, and it would not be comfortable if he lay still for a long time. Yao Yao massaged him carefully, and massaged all the muscles and bones of his body except his buttocks, as a reward for his heroic protection of his husband at a critical moment. Ajin performed really well today, and he looks particularly righteous. Righteous? Xiejin's mouth twitched. What did he say? Friends protecting each other is called righteousness, okay. Yao Yao always seems to be confused about relationships. But Xiejin didn't dwell on this, enjoying the little leopard's personal service, and closed his eyes and said, protecting you is what I should do. Xian Yuanyao paused slightly, staring at the back of his head silently. I think it should be me who protects you. Xiejin sighed in his heart and could only say, we protect each other. Protect each other? Xian Yuanyao pondered for a moment and felt that it seemed right, so he nodded. Well, protect each other. Author has something to say. Rebirth is a cool story. No matter whether it is the male or female protagonist or the supporting role, the story is fake and has nothing to do with reality. Whether from an ancient or modern perspective, rebirth itself is impossible to happen, so there is no need to bring it into reality. I wrote it for fun, and you are happy to read it. You can just fantasize about it. In reality, I am a person who doesn't even follow dramas. I like to read Denmei books and fantasize about it myself, but I don't watch Denmei TV dramas. I don't follow celebrities, and it is even more impossible to bring it into the modern world, so there is no need to talk about the modern world. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article feed, placement, below article feed, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 652. The next few days are recovery time. Sooner or later, Xian Yuanyao would go to pay his respects to his father, queen, mother, and concubine. After paying his respects, he would return to Feiying Yuan to have a meal with Xie Jin. Because the problem of incense inheritance was solved, both of them had taken off a big stone that was weighing on their hearts. It was undoubtedly easy to get along with each other. Many time passed like this day by day. Princess Huainan was soon out of confinement, and then it was the birthday of Prince Huainan, but there was no big fuss in the palace. As usual, there was no lively atmosphere at all. My father has never paid much attention to birthdays and the like. In the past, we just had a meal together as a family. In the evening, he would call several uncles and uncles in important positions in the army to come over and have a drink together. It was a lively meal. No, I don't even accept gifts. When Xian Yuanyao said this, he happened to encounter a congratulatory gift from Xie Jin. Xian Yuanyao went out to watch it with Xie Jin, and was speechless after watching it. The whole body is red and the sweat-blooded horse is in excellent condition and extremely valuable. There is also an ancient sword. The long brocade box contains the sword. The sword is 1 foot 8 long and 1.5 inches wide. The sword body is engraved with black diamond-shaped dark patterns. The front and back of the sword grid are decorated with blue glass and turquoise inlays. The sword hilt is wrapped with silk thread, 11 extremely fine concentric circles are cast inside. The brilliance blooms, the grace is clear. Xian Yuanyao looked at the sword, and his father's steady voice rang in his ears. According to legend, this sword is the perfect work of heaven and man, and it is called Chun Jun. Xian Yuanyao turned to look at him. Father, do you know this sword? In order to cast this sword, the Red Pansy Mountain broke through for thousands of years to produce tin, and the Rui River dried up for thousands of years to produce copper. Xie Jin smiled lightly. It is recorded in the book that when the sword was forged, Thunder God struck iron, and Yuniang poured water on it. The dragon holds the furnace, and the emperor holds the charcoal. The swordsmith Ouyuzi accepted the order of heaven and worked hard with the gods for 10 years to complete the sword. Xie Jin said, looking at Xian Yuanyao, after the sword is completed, the gods will return to heaven. King Huainan nodded. It is said that someone exchanged 2 cities for the sword but failed. Who knows about ancient things? Xie Jin slowly shook his head, but a sword matches a hero. The prince has been guarding the border for more than 20 years and has done his best for Dongling Shiji. He is actually the pillar of the country and the god of war at the border. This sword is most suitable for the prince. Xian Yuanyao glanced at him, then quietly looked at his father, secretly thinking that he was indeed Xie Hu. A bloody horse and an ancient sword are both extremely valuable and hard to get treasures. It can be seen that he has a very serious heart and knows how to give in to what he wants. He has accurately captured the appetite of a military general. Xie Jin is obviously betting that his father will be moved. Once the father accepts this gift, it is equivalent to recognizing his identity. From now on, their relationship will naturally become a matter of course. which is considered to have the tacit approval of both parents. Xian Yuanyao really had to admire his generosity and cunning thinking. However, based on his understanding of his father, he was afraid that his father would not accept this precious gift. No reward for no merit. King Huainan's tone was calm, just as Xian Yuanyao expected. Thank you for your kindness, sir. I appreciate it. I cannot accept these two gifts. Xiejin's expression straightened, and he lowered his eyebrows and said humbly, Your Majesty, you don't like Chunjun. King Huainan said, I have no reason to accept your gift. After a pause, he emphasized, I will not accept any gifts. You can take them back. Father Xian Yuanyao stood aside and spoke in a low voice. Xiejin spent a lot of effort to find it. I hope that my father will fulfill his filial piety. Filial piety, King Huainan frowned and said in a bad tone, the one he should be filial to is Xie Xiaofu. I don't have a son, so I need him to be filial. Xiejin's injuries have not healed, and his face is still a little pale, but he is just holding on. If the prince does not like these two gifts, I can find someone else for the prince. Can I have a sword manual for the art of war? According to legend, there are still ancient swords that still exist in the world. There are Xianyuan sword, Chenying sword and King Huainan said in an indifferent tone, do you want to exchange generous gifts for my son? Xiejin hesitated, this junior definitely has no such intention, and I don't dare to have such an idea. Father Xianyuanyao begged, Xiejin also wanted to do it, so my father simply fulfilled his wish. The king of Huainan said coldly, as a prince of the royal family, I abide by the laws of the family and the country. I can't do things like accepting bribes and enriching my own pockets. Mr. Xie, you'd better take these two things back to your father. My father is a civil servant in the imperial court and does not need to carry a sword all year round. Xiejin lowered his eyebrows, and this sword is actually collected by my father. He asked the younger generation to bring it to the prince as a filial piety, and it was regarded as the younger generation's dowry, and he also wanted to express his gratitude to the prince. Don't refuse. Dowry. These two words made King Huainan stunned, and then he narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiejin. Young Master Xie means that you want to be my daughter-in-law. Xiejin nodded, yes. Xian Yuanyao raised his lips and secretly said that Xiejin was originally the little daughter-in-law. King Huainan was silent for a moment. Xiejin, the legitimate son of the Xie family, is a famous figure in the imperial capital. He has heard a lot about this person, especially when he and Yao went to Shangning to investigate the case this year, and the two of them brought hundreds of members of the entire Yun family together. He also eradicated the family of Su Si, the Minister of Household Affairs in the central government, causing a stir in Shangning. He was a man of great talent and a young talent. He was highly regarded by Her Majesty the Queen and the Prince Regent in the court. He took up the post of Minister of the Ministry of Justice at a young age. He was also one of the best among the noble sons of the imperial capital. He had a good mind, was smart enough, and had a good appearance. He was aloof and untamable, but he was also one of the best. Able to bend and stretch. If we put aside the fact that his son was abducted, from a normal person's perspective, Xiejin is excellent in all aspects, attaches great importance to feelings, and has a tough personality. Although he is a splendid young man, he can endure hardships and is not an embroidered pillow. Such an outstanding man, whether as a son or a son-in-law, is undoubtedly likable. The premise is that he is a pure son and a pure son-in-law, rather than a fake daughter-in-law who abducted his own son. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 653. Just because the king of Huainan thought Xiejin was good, he couldn't understand why such an outstanding man didn't like women, but fell in love with a man like him. It was simply a waste of his parents' kindness in raising him. Don't worry, Your Majesty. If it is really bribery, then I am also a briber and should be punished according to the law. Siejin was sincere and humble, and wishful, thinking that King Huainan had some concerns, rather than simply not wanting to accept his gift. This is just a little thought from me, I hope Your Majesty will accept it. After a pause, after returning to the imperial capital, I will report this matter to His Majesty and the regent, and will never let Your Majesty take any risks. The King of Huainan came back to his senses, his expression revealing a bit of mockery. Mr. Xie is quite thoughtful. Not only did he send such a valuable gift, he even helped me eliminate the risks. I have never seen a gift giver who can consider things so comprehensively. Xiejin continued to be humble. This is what I should do. Xian Yuanyao felt that Xiejin must have been a fox who practiced for thousands of years in his previous life. In this life, he accidentally reincarnated as a human, but still retained some of the fox's temperament. Master Xie, please come with me to the study. King Huainan turned around and said calmly, Yao take the horse to the stable first, and put away the Chunjun sword for the time being. When Master Xie leaves Huainan, let him take it back with him. Xian Yuanyao pursed his lips and said, yes. Xiejin raised his eyes and looked at Xian Yuanyao, giving him a soothing look, indicating that he should stay calm, and then went to the study with King Huainan. Xian Yuanyao put away the sword, personally took the Ferghana horse down to settle it, and then turned to go to his father's study. After knocking on the door of the study and entering, Xian Yuanyao said respectfully, my son has something to report to my father. The King of Huainan raised his eyes, what is it? My younger brother will inherit the responsibility and military power of guarding Huainan in the future. He has taken on the responsibility that should have been borne by me at such a young age. I feel guilty and want to give the position of the crown prince to my younger brother, even if it is just a small compensation, or it is not compensation, but the title that should be given to my younger brother. Xian Yuanyao said in a low voice, I hope my father will approve. Responsibility and honor are one and the same. It doesn't make sense to let my younger brother take on the responsibility while I still occupy the title of the crown prince. Give the position of the crown prince to your brother. King Huainan frowned, why do you have such an idea? Xian Yuanyao hesitated for a moment, my son just thinks. Do you really want to marry into the Xie family and sever ties with the Huainan palace from now on? Xian Yuanyao was stunned and shook his head quickly, father, you are wise, my son definitely does not mean that. If you want to sever ties with the palace, I can help you. King Huainan said, I can immediately announce that I will sever the father-son relationship with you. Xian Yuanyao's face changed, my son definitely does not mean that. Since you don't mean that, don't mention this matter again in the future. But what? King Huainan frowned, you didn't get hit by the military stick a few days ago, so you feel uncomfortable, right? Do you have to be beaten to feel comfortable? Xian Yuanyao shook his head quickly. I will not take the Ferghana horse and the Chunjun sword, and I will not care about your affairs anymore. King Huainan said in a light voice, a son is no longer under the control of his father, and I can't care so much. Xian Yuanyao's heart tightened, and he felt guilty and knelt down immediately, my son knows his mistakes and has disappointed his father. Xiejin knelt down beside him without hesitation. King Huainan looked at the two young men in front of him without any expression. They were so outstanding and dazzling, but they made him feel very depressed. Do you know that you have a special identity? King Huainan's voice was slightly deep. One is the son of the Prime Minister, and he is unscrupulous in his own behavior. In addition, with the favor of His Majesty and the regent, how many people in the court are watching you? If you make a wrong step, those people you offended in the court today will try their best to kill you in the future. Have you thought about this? Xiejin was silent for a moment. Even if it is just for Yao Yao, I will be more careful in my future actions, not reckless and impulsive, only do what I should do, and try my best to keep a clear conscience and not leave any handle in anyone's hands. Yandere is my son, and he is valued by the regent in the imperial capital. He holds the military power of the Black Obsidian Army. This is also an identity that many people are afraid of. King Huainen's tone became heavier. You two are so close, in the eyes of many people with ulterior motives, you are privately giving and receiving, close contacts, or even forming a clique for personal gain. The combination of court power and military power is also a taboo for the emperor. Xiejin understood his meaning and concerns. The king of Huainan has held military power for more than 20 years and guarded the border. Although there have been few wars in Dongling, he has been able to stay in Huainan for more than 20 years without causing trouble, without causing the emperor's suspicion, and without attracting the attention of the court officials. This shows that he is calm and measured, and knows what he can and cannot do. There is nothing wrong with Xiejin's temperament. It can even be said that as long as the emperor does not suspect him, he will live a glorious life. But a person's life is neither long nor short. Who can guarantee that he will not capsize in the gutter? Don't have the intention to harm others, but be on guard against others. Sometimes being too sharp is not necessarily a good thing, especially when entering the court. Even if you have the trust of the king, you should have a minimum sense of crisis. After all, there is only a thief for 1,000 days, how can you guard against thieves for 1,000 days? Even in the prosperous Qingming era, there are inevitably 1 or 2 stinky rats and bugs hiding in the dark and shameful ditches, waiting for an opportunity to move, and at least disgust you if you don't die. Your Highness, I understand your painstaking efforts, Xiejin promised sincerely. I will think carefully and be cautious in the future, not easily leave a handle for others, and try to be low-key and calm, not to cause trouble, and never bring unnecessary trouble to the Xie family and Yao Yao. Father, please rest assured that the master trusts me and Ajin and will not easily be suspicious. Xian Yuan Yao also emphasized, if father is worried, Ajin and I will be cautious in the future, and walk on thin ice. In addition to the things that the master has instructed, we will act low-key, be low-key, not easily make enemies, and never easily leave any handle for others. The king of Huainan understood that Xiejin was a fox with a deep mind. Even though he was still young, he would think carefully about what he did, but he still couldn't avoid some worries. These two are smart people, a little reminder is enough, no need to emphasize it over and over again. Huainan king waved his hand, everyone go out. Your Majesty. Xiejin lowered his eyebrows and looked at the ground. The Ferghana horse and the Chunjun sword are my heartfelt gifts, I hope your Majesty will not refuse, otherwise I will feel uneasy. What? Huainan king's eyes fell on him, you want to give me something, do I have to accept it? Junior dare not. Xiejin's humble attitude is impeccable, it's just that I came to Huainan with Yao Yao this time to give you a gift. Before leaving, my father has always told me that I must be respectful to you and never offend you. I hope your Majesty will fulfill my filial piety. Xiejin, I have never seen anyone like you. Huainan king's expression was cold, you are still rushing to give gifts after being beaten, do you have a tendency to be abused? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 654. Xian Yuanyao nodded silently, feeling that what his father said was absolutely right. Xiaohu really has a tendency to be abused. How many times has he been injured in the past year? The first time was when he tried to commit suicide by using the torture method, the second time was when he was taught a terrible lesson by the Lord, and this was the third time. Xian Yuanyao couldn't help but wonder, had Xiejin never been spanked before and wanted to know what it felt like to be spanked, so he tried it again and again with his own butt? Xiejin sighed and said helplessly, reporting to the prince, this junior has no tendency to be abused. He just met someone he likes and is willing to pay any price for the opportunity to be with him. This junior does not want him to feel uneasy. Even if this emotions cannot be tolerated in the world, and I still selfishly hope to get some blessings from my relatives. After all, if I have no grudges and am calm in my heart, the road ahead will be smoother. Xian Yuanyao pursed his lips and secretly thanked the fox for failing to bribe him, so he started to attack the heart. King Huainan's eyes were heavy, but he just stared at Xiejin without saying a word. Although the 36 strategies can be seen through at a glance for a general like him, the cunning thing is that Xiejin doesn't mind being seen through, and even frankly cuts himself open in front of him, asking for a piece of it without any concealment. Selfish blessings, confess the truest thoughts in my heart. Only when you have no grudges and are calm in your heart can the road ahead be smoother. Doesn't this tell him that if he doesn't get his blessing, Xian Yuanyao will have trouble in the court in the future? The study was quiet. King Huainan raised his hand and rubbed his eyebrows, and said in a calm voice, "My king's son is a member of the royal family. You can't exchange it for a horse and a sword. You can think about it carefully after you go back, of course, neither will I mind if you seek your father's advice, prepare more dowry and make it as generous as possible. In addition, I want to see your sincerity and attitude." Xie Jinyi was delighted. "What do you want, your majesty dash?" "I have no requirements," King Huainan said calmly, "it depends on the sincerity of you, father and son." Xian Yuanyao blinked. Did his father really regard Xiejin as his daughter-in-law? Generous dowry. Xiejin was silent for a moment and nodded slowly. "Don't worry, your majesty, I will definitely let your majesty see my sincerity." Having no request is the most difficult request, but Xiejin believed that this was the step given to him by the king of Huainan. He already agreed in his heart but couldn't pull it off, so he could only ask him a difficult question. King Huainan waved his hand as if to shoo away flies. "Get out." "Yes. Junior, please take your leave." "Son, resign." The two of them said goodbye, turned around and walked out of the study. It's a crisp autumn day outside, the sun is bright and cloudless. It's nice weather. My father has agreed that we should be together. Xian Yuanyao turned to look at Xiejin, with joy hidden in his eyes, "But you have to prepare some dowry. From now on, you will be the royal wife. Are you happy?" Xiejin looked at him silently. "From now on, I will be the Xie family of Xian Yuan." Xian Yuanyao was strangely silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Xian Yuan Xie, yes, it sounds very impressive." The two of them looked at each other and smiled, both feeling amused, but even more so, they were relieved and happy. "Your injury hasn't been healed yet, so go back to the house and lie down first," Xian Yuanyao said, suddenly blessed. "By the way, since I want my father to see your sincerity, I think you can write a handwritten copy house rules." Hearing this, Xiejin suddenly had an ominous premonition. "What are the family rules?" "Our family's family rules, for example, if you dare to do something you shouldn't do in the future, I will punish you according to family laws. I also reserve the right to divorce my wife at any time." Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows and said incomparably, "As for how to write this family rule and how many articles you should write, it depends on your sincerity. The more you write, the more sincere you are, the more satisfied my father will be." Xiejin looked at him without saying a word, thinking that this little leopard had become cunning recently. "You can bully me just because you are on your own territory. How am I bullying you? Am I thinking about you?" Xian Yuanyao cried out. "What if the dowry you prepared is not in line with my father's wishes and my father does not agree to let you enter the Xian Yuan family?" Xiejin reached out and pinched his face. "Yao Yao, you should always maintain the innocence, simplicity and kindness of a young man. You can just say that I am stupid." Xian Yuanyao waved away his fox paw, "but you should know that when you are close to red, you are red, and when you are close to ink, you are dark. I also learned my cunning from you, otherwise I am so simple and naive. How can a kind-hearted young man be your opponent? Maybe one day he will be swallowed up to the point where nothing is left." Yao Yao said this as if I specialize in cannibalism. Xiejin frowned, thinking carefully. but Yao Yao only talked about the dowry, not the betrothal gift. Xian Yuan Yao raised his eyebrows. Bride price? What do you want? I want Yao Yao. Xiejin put his arms around his waist. The betrothal gift is Yao Yao's promise of her body. Xian Yuan Yao said calmly, of course it's okay to agree with me, but I want to be on top. The two of them walked all the way to Feiying Yuan, seemingly leisurely, but in fact they started to fight for their own rights without stopping. Although they were both in a good mood after the rain, they still had to fight for what should be fought. This is related to future dignity and family status and must be discussed seriously. Yao Yao is up there, Xiejin breathed into his ear, his evil and bewitching voice making people blush and heartbeat. Do you know what to do? Xian Yuan Yao put his hand on his butt with a handsome face. Xiejin took a breath, his brows furrowed together in pain. Yao Yao, please be gentle, my husband's injury is not healed yet. Xian Yuan Yao narrowed his eyes and twisted the flesh on his butt with his fingers, with a strong sense of threat. Who is the husband? You are for my husband. Xiejin knew the current situation and begged for mercy in a soft voice. I am a delicate body and a precious body. I hope that your husband will show mercy. Xian Yuan Yao snorted coldly, his heart softened, and he couldn't do it anymore. I will prepare paper and pen for you later. You can write a few articles for me to read. Xian Yuan Yao said, for the sake of your physical disability and strong will, I reserve the right to treat you with family and military law at any time. Right? Yao Yao, the corners of your mouth are almost reaching the sky. Xiejin turned his head and stared at the curvature of the corners of his mouth, and calmly reminded him, don't be too proud, be careful when extreme happiness leads to sadness. No crow's mouth allowed. The two of us will live a good life in the future. If your hands are itchy, you can always use them to practice with the soldiers in the military camp. You can't think about dealing with me all the time. Xiejin said, if my hands are itchy, I will use them to practice with you. Even if you give me 100 courages, I would not be willing to attack Yao Yao, even if you give me 100 courages to attack those corrupt officials who are taking bribes and occupying the toilet. Xian Yuan Yao had no time to be impressed by his loyal attitude at this time, and glanced at him casually. Father, what you want us to do is to restrain our sharpness, and while doing our duty, we must be as low-key and cautious as possible to avoid being misled by villains. Exploit the loopholes. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 655. Don't worry Yao Yao. After walking into the room, Xiejin spontaneously walked to the bed and lay down on the bed. The laws of the family and the country are majestic and unchallengeable, and the bottom line of Her Majesty the Queen and the Lord is also unchallengeable for us. As long as we do what we should do not violate laws and disciplines, and be honest in everything we do, even those bugs in the gutter will not be able to catch us. Xian Yuan Yao thought about it and felt that what he said made sense. A man should have his own responsibilities, do what needs to be done, say what needs to be said, be open and calm, above board, and have no fear of any rumors or villains. If you always have worries, you will inevitably be constrained in doing things. What's more, their allegiance is to the Ming Lord. Even if they really forget about it in the future and do something they shouldn't do, the Lord will use a cane to tell them in advance that the consequences of doing something wrong are very serious, very serious. Xian Yuan Yao sat down on the edge of the bed and said calmly, if my father knew that the Lord taught you the same as he taught his own son, he probably wouldn't worry that we are about to make a mistake. Xiejin was stunned. He didn't expect Xian Yuan Yao to talk about this embarrassing incident. He was silent for a moment. Yao Yao was taught a lesson by the master for a few years. Xian Yuan Yao glared at him. Okay, don't worry about those unnecessary worries. Xiejin held his chin in thought, I think I can learn to make tea. Make tea? Xian Yuan Yao couldn't keep up with his jumping thoughts. Why do you suddenly want to learn tea art? Although I know a little bit about it, brewing a pot of tea with my own hands and giving it to my father-in-law should be more expressive of my filial piety. Xiejin is very good at filial piety. What do you think of Yao Yao? Xian Yuanyao pursed his lips and felt a little embarrassed. Then do I have to learn it too? After I learned it, I brewed it for Xie Xiaofu to drink. Xie Jin was about to say no, but Xian Yuanyao suddenly narrowed his eyes. What did you just say? Father-in-law. Slip of the tongue. Xie Jin quickly changed his words. I said father-in-law, but Yao Yao, I don't think you need to worry about these titles. Of course you have to struggle, you must struggle, Xian Yuanyao said confidently. This is about who will go up and who will go down in the future. How can you not be entangled? I tell you, you are the one who wants to be the little wife. You are not allowed to go back on your word in the future, otherwise I will divorce. Xie Jin was silent, he seemed to have dug a big hole for himself. Let's make family rules while we are free now. Xian Yuanyao did as he said. After saying that, he quickly got up and moved a small case over, prepared paper and pen, and even laid out the rice paper for Xie Jin carefully and considerately. On the case, he personally polished it for Xie Jin, dipped the pen in ink and sent it to Xie Jin. Write it now. Xie Jin struggled desperately. Yao Yao, my injury is not healed yet. The injury is on your butt, it has nothing to do with your writing, Xian Yuanyao said. Is it possible that you wrote with your butt? Xie Jin. Xian Yuanyao's tone was cold and impatient. Hurry up and write. The opportunity is rare, if you miss it, you will regret it. Xie Jin glanced at him faintly. What to write? I said you write. I say one thing and you write the other. Xian Yuanyao dragged a rosewood stool over and sat down. The first rule of the family is that from now on, Xie Jin will marry Xian Yuanyao and officially become the Xie family of Xian Yuan. Unless Xian Yuan is married in the future, divorce your wife, otherwise the relationship will never change. The corner of Xie Jin's lips curled up slightly, and he sighed secretly. Did the little leopard really not understand? Only the more unconfident things need to be emphasized again and again? But he doesn't think this is important. Right now, the key is to follow his wishes and coax the person completely. So Xie Jin gave up struggling, nodded, lay on the bedside and started writing. The second rule of the family rule is that from now on, Xie Jinwei's husband, Xian Yuanyao, will follow his lead, obey him in everything, and shall not disobey. The third rule of the family is that Xie Jin must abide by the rules of being a wife. He is not allowed to go out to flirt with women, and is not allowed to show his face. Yao Yao. Xie Jin raised his head and interrupted him as he spoke more and more excitedly. It's understandable that you are not allowed to flirt with women, but you are not allowed to show up in public. Do you mean to let me stay in the boudoir without leaving the door? Xian Yuanyao was silent for a moment. You don't need to write about being in public. Xie Jin hummed, thank you husband for your kindness. Xian Yuanyao's grinding hand trembled. He really didn't know how Xie Jin could maintain such a calm attitude and not show the slightest grievance when he was forced to write this too much bullying, unfair treating. He glanced at him silently. He continued, the fourth rule of the family is that the husband Xian Yuanyao is on top, and the wife Xie Jin is on the bottom. The husband is the wife's guide, and the husband and wife are not allowed to disturb the rules of the couple. Xie Jin had a very steady hand when writing. He would write whatever Xian Yuanyao said. If he had any questions, he would ask them on the spot. If there was no problem, he would just copy them. His cooperative attitude was so impeccable that even Xian Yuanyao felt that he was sincere. Easy to talk to. Article 5 of the Family Rules, if Xie Jin violates any of the above, Xian Yuanyao has the right to punish Xie Jin using family laws. If the circumstances are serious, he can divorce his wife and marry another. Hearing this, Xie Jin raised his eyes and looked at him. Yao Yao, are these family rules too few? Do you want to think about a few more? No need. Xian Yuanyao's purpose is just to ensure family status, and nothing else is important. Xie Jin only needs to obey her husband in the future. Even if she is occasionally ill, her husband Xian Yuanyao will take good care of her and will not abandon you at will. Xie Jin could hardly stop the laughter that surged in his chest. He nodded and said, "Thank you for your consideration and love, husband." It should be Xian Yuanyao nodded, "But I will think of other rules and regulations in the future, and you will have to make up for them when the time comes." Xiejin nodded and agreed, "No problem." After writing the house rules, he signed and sealed them. Xiejin signed the unequal treaty step by step according to Xian Yuanyao's request. When the ink dried, Xian Yuanyao folded the house rules and put them away, saying lightly, "When I return to the imperial capital, I will present this rule and treaty to the master for review and ask His Majesty to seal it with the jade seal. In the future, it will become an imperial decree. Xiejin, you will definitely not be able to bear the consequences of disobeying the decree." Xiejin was slightly surprised, presented to the master for review. Xian Yuanyao nodded. Xiejin was silent for a longer time this time, secretly thinking that if the little leopard really had this face, he would really be convinced, but he was afraid that he had the heart but not the courage. "You should rest first." Xian Yuanyao stood up with the house rules, "I'll get you something to eat." Xiejin put down the brush, lay on the pillow, and sighed faintly, "Sure enough, the tiger is in a state of decline." "Huh?" Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows, "Are you scolding me?" "I dare not." Xiejin shook his head quickly, "I just sighed." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 656. Xian Yuanyao sneered, too lazy to expose his lies. But let him scold, anyway, he is now in the right time to be a husband. A good man does not fight with a woman, well, a good man does not fight with Xiejin. Seeing that he is injured and has just signed unequal family rules, Xian Yuanyao does not bother with him. But although the little leopard has long known the fox's cunning nature, his momentary excitement made him ignore the extent of the fox's cunning. Xie Fox is not invincible, but is very good at attacking the heart. Showing weakness is never a result, but only one of the means to be used in the process of attacking the heart. Temporary concession is not permanent concession. The upright little leopard wants to defeat the cunning and clever fox. Unless the fox voluntarily admits defeat, otherwise, under the premise of mutual affection, it is only a matter of time before the little leopard is eaten up and nothing is left. A big stone in the heart is removed, and the two of them will continue to recuperate and bicker for the next few days, which is endless fun. Half a month passed in a flash. Now that the two people have become popular figures in the court, they cannot stay in Huainan for too long. After recovering from their injuries, Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao went to a famous jewelry store in the neighboring city to order several sets of precious and exquisite jewelry. One set of expensive classic headdress and a pair of high-quality jade bracelets were given to the Huainan princess, and one set of young-style jewelry was given to the married princess Xian Yuanswiling. There were also 2 longevity locks, one for the Huainan princess's son Huier, and one for Swilling's unborn child. Anyway, in less than a month in Huainan, Xiejin's generous spending was definitely enough for ordinary powerful families to marry 18 wives, which shows that Xian Yuanyao's position in his heart is more important than 3,000 concubines. Among them, those that can be converted into silver are so generous, and the Chunjun sword can be said to be a priceless treasure that cannot be bought with money. The fox is not only smart and flexible, but also sweet-mouthed. He is also a first-rate scoundrel in pestering people. After his cleverness and scheming didn't work on the king of Huainan, he had to resort to the worst strategy, pestering. Every morning, he personally brewed a pot of tea to greet the king of Huainan. When he saw the prince, he would pour a cup of tea and hold it in his hand, or kneel down to serve tea. Anyway, in order to win the beauty, he didn't care about his face and dignity. If the prince said he was busy, he would hold the teacup with both hands. Although the freshly brewed tea was still hot and hurt his hands, he had no intention of giving up. Although the king of Waynan had a cold and hard temperament, he was really not interested in seeing his self-abuse behavior. In order to prevent Mr. Xia's beautiful hands from being burned with blisters, he could only take the teacup and take a sip, which was considered as accepting the tea offered by his daughter-in-law. In the evening, he insisted on paying respects to the prince and accepting his instructions. Even if the king of Waynan did not want to talk to him, Xiahuli was shameless and thick-skinned. He was not afraid of the cold face of the prince. Even if the king of Waynan ignored him, he was still sincere. He insisted every morning and evening. His filial piety and sincerity finally touched the heart of the prince. Of course, whether it was the heart of the prince that was touched or he was really pestered, the king of Waynan finally accepted the gift and began to order Xiejin and Xianyuanyao to disappear from his sight impatiently. In this way, Xiahuli, who had achieved his wish, finally said goodbye to the king of Waynan and the queen on October 5 with his sweetheart, left Waynan and set off on the road back to the imperial capital. He was free and unrestrained along the way, riding a horse to soar between heaven and earth, galloping against the wind, letting his hair fly, and enjoying the freedom of flying in the vast world. Whether they are cunning or calm, smart or open-minded, even if one has entered the officialdom and held great power, and the other has long grown into a powerful general, we cannot ignore that they are just two young men in their early 20s. Young people should be proud and indulge themselves, enter a city, enter a house, choose a picturesque residence, pour 2 glasses of fine wine, and drink in the wind under the bright moonlight. Is this considered a wedding wine? Fox narrowed his beautiful phoenix eyes and smiled with joy in his eyes. Yao Yao, I feel that my life has been perfect so far. No matter how glorious my career will be in the future, even if I stand at the top of the powerful ministers, it is just icing on the cake for me at this moment. I am satisfied with you in this life. Xianyuanyao sat on the roof with his knees hugged, looking at the starry night sky. His handsome face was slightly drunk because of the wine, and he looked really tempting. Xiejin looked at it and felt that he should do something. Yao Yao, he handed a glass of wine to his lips. Drink another glass. Xianyuanyao opened his mouth and drank it, then turned his head and looked at him with drunken eyes. Ajin, are you happy? Happy. Xiejin picked up the wine pot and poured another glass. Yao Yao, I won't go home until I'm drunk tonight. Xianyuanyao drank the wine, his voice was slightly hoarse. Why are you happy? Xiejin's voice was calm, because I have completed my cultivation with my beloved. Xianyuanyao squinted at him. Beloved? Who is it? You. Xiejin laughed, put down the wine cup, stretched out his hand to hold his waist, and took him into his arms. Yao Yao, we. The husband is the head of the wife. Xianyuanyao frowned, trying to get out of his confinement. Xiejin, why are you hugging me? Is Yao Yao drunk? No, I'm not drunk. Xianyuanyao shook his head slowly, stood up but found that the tree was shaking, and the world began to spin. He spoke in a daze. Ajin, how, what's going on? Xiejin held him in his arms, lowered his head and kissed his rosy lips. The aroma of wine filled his nose. Yao Yao. Let go, let me go. Xianyuanyao stretched out his hand to push him away. No, you are not allowed to be rude to your husband. He wanted to stand up and want to assert his authority as a husband, but his feet were unstable, and his body stumbled back into Xiejin's arms. Ajin. Yes, I'm here. Xiejin kissed his ear, his voice was low and full of temptation. Yao Yao, let's go take a bath, okay? Bathe. Xianyuanyao opened his eyes, but his mind was obviously a little unclear. Okay, take a bath, he. Xiejin held him and flew to the backyard. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 657. There is a hot spring behind the courtyard. Taking a hot spring bath in this season is definitely an ultimate enjoyment. Xiejin stripped himself and Xianyuanyao naked, walked into the hot spring pool, and washed every part of his body from hair to soles. Even Xian Yuanyao's most disdainful bathing method, using perfume to spray the body, which would emit a faint and refreshing floral fragrance, Xiejin did not miss it at all and used it on both of them. The little leopard seemed drunk but not drunk. After being slightly tipsy, he soaked in the hot spring pool for a while. Xiuya's complexion became more rosy, his eyes were blurred, and there was a temptation that Xiejin could not resist everywhere. After washing for half an hour, Xiejin took the little leopard out of the hot spring pool, wiped his body with a towel, wrapped the two people in a wide cloak, and flew towards the bedroom. The night breeze blew by, and a bit of coolness scraped across his skin. Xian Yuanyao suddenly became more conscious. Ajin. Xian Yuanyao's voice was tense. What are you doing? Xiejin's expression paused slightly, and he lowered his eyebrows to look at him. You were a little drunk just now. I took you to take a shower, and we were just about to go to bed. Bed. Xian Yuanyao hadn't reacted yet, and Xiahuli had already brought him to the oversized bed in the bedroom. His thoughts froze for a moment, and then Xian Yuanyao turned over and sat up, and the movement was so big that he directly tore off his robe. He quickly wrapped himself in the quilt and raised his eyes and said, Xiejin. Something seemed to be wrong. Xiejin looked at the situation in front of him, slowly wrapped himself in his robe, and hummed, Yao Yao, we just drank the wedding wine. Wedding wine? Xian Yuanyao frowned at him. Isn't that something you drink on the wedding night? Yes, Xiejin nodded. We drank the wedding wine, so we are married. Xian Yuanyao thought about it and nodded slowly. Yes, you can say that. Although both of them are vying to be the husband and let the other be the wife, it is impossible for two men to really hold a grand wedding ceremony. Who is the husband and who is the wife is just a verbal bargain. If you really want to implement it, it is impossible. He will not break Xiejin's pride, and Xiejin will not let him be married like a woman. Their relationship is like that of husband and wife, but it is more of a spiritual understanding and appreciation. They can get along like brothers, a little closer than brothers, like confidants, a little more charming than confidants, and like husband and wife, but with more respect than ordinary husband and wife. Xian Yuanyao thinks this is a relatively pure relationship, without any uncomfortable factors. Xiejin's eyes were filled with anticipation and joy. Since we have already drunk the wedding wine, should we? Xian Yuanyao pondered the meaning of this sentence and looked at him with a strange look. You want to pledge your love to me? Xiejin's mouth twitched, and he instantly realized that he seemed to have made a mistake. He shouldn't have let the little leopard take a bath. Wouldn't it be better to take him to bed directly under the influence of alcohol? Now that he was sober, it seemed that he was not so easy to fool. Yao Yao. Don't forget what is written in the family rules, who is on top and who is below. Xian Yuanyao said calmly. Xiejin, if you dare to violate the family rules, I don't mind punishing you with family rules. Xiejin. Are you going to come again? Xian Yuanyao asked, and then he remembered that he didn't seem to have done any homework, and his heart was suddenly unsure. Forget it, let's talk about it later. As he said, he lay down on the bed and wrapped the whole quilt around himself. Sleep. Xiejin watched him wrapped like a silkworm pupa, deeply feeling the depression and frustration of dying before achieving success. The expectations and joy of a moment ago were swept away, leaving only a heart full of melancholy. Yao Yao. Xian Yuanyao's whole body was wrapped in the quilt, revealing only his face and a pair of dark and clean eyes. What are you doing? What are you doing? Do something that makes people happy. Xiejin sat down on the bed and tried to communicate with him. Sooner or later we will. I'm not ready yet, Xian Yuanyao said calmly. I heard there are many books to learn from. I plan to buy a few tomorrow to have a look. Xiejin was silent for a moment. No need to look at those books, I can teach you. You don't need to teach me, Xian Yuanyao refused flatly. I will figure out this kind of thing myself, so as not to weaken the husband's authority. Xiejin was speechless. Little Leopard seemed to have an incomprehensible obsession with things like strengthening the husband's authority. The night was deep. Xiejin sat alone for a while, and then he was sure that the beauty of tonight was broken. He had to put on his pajamas and slowly lay down on the bed. He stared at the little leopard helplessly for a long time. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and pulled the young man wrapped like a silkworm cocoon into his arms. Yao Yao. Don't talk, I'm almost asleep. Xian Yuan Yao's voice was a little sleepy, but his dark eyes were clearly not sleepy at all. Will you continue your journey tomorrow morning? No, let's stay here for a day. Xiejin looked at him. The weather is good these 2 days. We can learn from the master, travel while traveling, and cultivate our relationship. After returning to the imperial capital, we will start to be busy again. I don't know when we will have the opportunity to come out next time. Xian Yuanyao pursed his lips. Ajin. Xian Yuanyao seemed a little puzzled. Why do you think my father doesn't agree with me giving the position of the prince to my younger brother? Xiejin smiled faintly. Silly, you can't figure this out? The position of the prince has been yours since you were born, and you are the eldest son. There is no reason to give it to your brother. But although your father is annoyed with our relationship, his anger about the inheritance of incense and worldly criticism is ultimately no match for his love for his son. If he really agrees to give up the position of the prince at this time, how will the imperial capital's dignitaries look at you in the future? Xiejin said in a faint tone. Although you are willing, you can't help but feel lost, even crazy thoughts? Xian Yuanyao shook his head. He was willing to come out. How could I have crazy thoughts? Parents who love their children will plan for them in the long run. Xiejin smiled. After all, your brother is just a younger brother, and he can't go beyond his elder brother. This is the case for ordinary families, let alone the royal family. Besides, he is still young now. When he grows up, he will guard the border and only hold the position of a general. As long as he has the ability, he can still be respected by thousands of soldiers. It doesn't matter whether he has the position of a prince or not. Xian Yuanyao frowned slightly. If you really feel guilty and blame yourself, you should behave well in the future. If you make great contributions, you may be able to ask for a title for your brother, Xiejin said, but these are all things for the future. Your brother has just turned 1 month old. It's too early to think about these things now. Xian Yuanyao thought about it. Huier is still young, so there is no rush for the time being. When his younger brother is young, he will be in his 40s. At that time, he will definitely be able to earn a glorious title for his younger brother. Yao Yao, when we are old enough, we will retire from the court early to travel and see all the beautiful scenery in the world. Xiejin's voice was soft. Just the two of us, go to the prairie, to the vast mountains, ride horses freely, sit on the top of the mountain to watch the sunrise and sunset. When we are tired, we can use the sky as a roof and the ground as a bed. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 658. Xian Yuanyao was a little moved. When night falls, we can lean our heads against each other, talk about everything, look up at the starry sky, and guess which star we will become in the future. Xiejin's voice was pleasant, and it was really a moving enjoyment to listen to at night. We can smell each other's breath, and when we are moved, we will have a Wuxian rain. Xian Yuanyao originally just closed his eyes and listened quietly to the beautiful pictures outlined by Xiejin, as if those scenes were right in front of him and they could reach them with their hands. However, after hearing Xiejin's last sentence, Xian Yuanyao suddenly opened his eyes and stretched out his hand to pinch Xiejin's face. What's in your mind? Have you never heard of the saying, don't say anything inappropriate? Have you read all the sage books for many years? Yao Yao. Xiejin grabbed his hand and started kissing him. When two people are in love, they want to do something happy. This is a very normal thing, and it's not shameful. What's so difficult to say? Xian Yuanyao was silent for a moment. Shut up. Xiejin smiled. Okay, I'll shut up. Xian Yuanyao closed his eyes again. Yao Yao is a pure young man who has not experienced the beauty of love. After experiencing it in the future, I'm afraid he will be addicted and can't stop. Although Xian Yuanyao was briefly awake just now, it was because he was blown by the night wind after taking a bath and felt the coldness of the night, so he woke up a little. At this time, the alcohol was rising, and his head was a little dizzy. He really wanted to sleep, but Xiejin kept saying some vulgar words in his ear, which made him annoyed and angry. When he opened his eyes and glared at Xiejin for the third time, his sleepy eyes clearly hid ill will. If you dare to speak again, don't blame me for using the family rules. Xiejin was silent for a moment and defended, this rule doesn't seem to be written into the family rules. Who said that? Xian Yuanyao frowned, I told you to shut up and sleep quietly. If you don't listen, you are not obedient to your husband and violate the second rule of the family rules. Okay. What Xiao Beizai said makes sense. Although Xiejin thinks that family rules are also a kind of fun, Xian Yuanyao is clearly in a slightly drunk state. If he gets angry and really wants to beat him up, Xiejin can't resist and can only be beaten obediently. Embarrassment is not the most important thing, and delaying the trip is not a big deal, but it is really unnecessary to be beaten for such a small thing. House rules are fun, but getting beaten is not fun. Xiejin finally calmed down, pulled Xian Yuanyao's quilt apart bit by bit, and wrapped the two of them in it. Xian Yuanyao was about to speak when Xiejin spoke in time, with a pitiful tone, Yao Yao, I'm cold. Xian Yuanyao paused and said nothing, acquiescing to his aggressive behavior. Xiejin hugged his thin waist and closed his eyes contentedly, but he could do nothing with his beloved in his arms. He was the only one to bear the unbearable feeling of this night. Xian Yuanyao had already fallen asleep under the influence of alcohol. Xiejin hugged him with peace of mind and kissed his face, mouth, and ears. He had kissed everything that should be kissed, but there was still one step left. The next morning, the two of them slept until the sun was basking on their butts before they woke up leisurely. His thoughts froze for a moment. Xian Yuanyao stared at the head in front of him for a long time, and the scene of drinking with Xiejin on the roof last night slowly emerged in front of him, and then the two of them took a bath together. Xiejin helped him take a bath, dried his body, put on a large nightgown together, and then went into the bedroom. Then, what did Xiejin want to do? Yao Yao, are you awake? A voice sounded in his ear. Xian Yuanyao came back to his senses instantly, stared at Xiejin for a moment. Did you want to take advantage of me last night? Xiejin was silent, then shook his head. What are you talking about? How could I take advantage of you? You got me drunk last night, what do you want to do to me? Xian Yuanyao narrowed his eyes, take advantage of drunkenness to do something improper. Xiejin was overjoyed in his heart, but frowned calmly on his face. Yao Yao, think too much, how could I do something improper to you? Xian Yuanyao sneered, you know what you want to do, take advantage of my unconsciousness and want to force yourself on me. Xiejin sighed, how could I force myself on Yao Yao? Yao Yao, you are too suspicious. I just saw that you were drunk, so I gave you a bath. You didn't wear clothes after taking a bath. I wore them. Xian Yuanyao said, we share one. The robe is big enough for two people to wear. Xian Yuanyao stretched out his legs and wanted to kick him down, but Xiejin reacted very quickly and reached out to grab his feet. Yao Yao, I am not wearing clothes. If I kick you like this, my reputation will be ruined, and Yao Yao will also be ashamed, right? It would have been better if he didn't mention it. As soon as he mentioned that he was not wearing clothes, Xian Yuanyao got angry and broke free from his hand and kicked him off the bed. Bang! The sound of the body falling to the ground seemed a bit dull, because the ground was covered with a soft blanket, so it was not so hard to fall. Xiejin didn't move for a long time after being kicked down. Xian Yuanyao frowned, stood up and took a look, and found that he was clearly wearing a white nightgown, while he was naked? He was immediately embarrassed and annoyed. Xiejin, wait for me. Xiejin got up from the ground, looking resentful. Yao Yao, it is a bad move for a husband to beat his wife, and people will look down on him. Xian Yuanyao was silent. It seems to be right. He is the husband, how can a husband hit his wife? The two looked at each other, and the atmosphere was a little weird. Xian Yuanyao coughed lightly. I just woke up, my mind was still a little confused. I thought you were a thief who came to attack me, so I attacked you. Xiejin corrected, I used my foot. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 659. Xian Yuanyao nodded, well, it's my fault after all. It doesn't matter. Xiejin smiled, got up and got into bed, just don't do it next time. Xian Yuanyao secretly thought that he might not be able to control it next time. This fox lady always has the ability to arouse the anger of others, making people want to kill him all the time. Xian Yuanyao was not wearing any clothes at this time, and he really didn't want to continue chatting with him, so he coldly ordered Xiejin to bring his clothes. Xiejin brought Xian Yuanyao's clothes and asked diligently, do you want me to serve you? Slave family. Xian Yuanyao paused for a moment and ignored him. After getting dressed, he got up to wash up and casually ordered, go and see if breakfast is ready in the kitchen. Xiejin remembered that Xian Yuanyao was a little drunk last night, and asked with concern, Yao Yao doesn't feel any discomfort? Does he have a headache? It's okay. Xian Yuanyao rubbed his head, and there was indeed no discomfort. He shook his head slowly, I wasn't drunk last night. Xiejin smiled and said, well, I'm just a little tipsy. Xian Yuanyao glanced at him and warned coldly, don't use this method on me next time, otherwise I will not let you go easily. Xiejin smiled sullenly, yes, I remember it. Xian Yuanyao was quite satisfied with his cooperative attitude, so he hummed coldly and said nothing more. Breakfast went smoothly, everything was peaceful and calm. The weather is good today, suitable for basking in the sun. Xiejin said, Yao Yao, let's stay here to rest for a day, and then we will start our journey tomorrow. Xian Yuanyao frowned. It's just one day, so the Lord can understand it. Xiejin said, in May, June, and July, I stirred up huge waves in the court. The ministers were frightened all day long, and the Lord was also very busy. Please spend time with your majesty. Xian Yuanyao thought about it, and it was indeed true. The two of us have been away from the imperial capital for a month. The Lord has free time to spend more time with His Majesty, and the ministers can finally breathe a sigh of relief. I think everyone will be happy if we go back later. Xian Yuanyao frowned, thinking that if the ministers in the court heard the news of Xiejin's return to the capital, they would probably be on tenterhooks for a while, but this was not a reason for them to be lazy. After a moment of silence, Xian Yuanyao said, when I return this time, I will act more low-key, so that the ministers can take a breather. Yao Yao, don't worry. Xiejin smiled lightly, although it has stirred up a lot of people, it is only that group of people who are always worried. For the ministers who are sitting upright, even if the noise is bigger, they will still be worried. Still calm and calm, without panic or fear. Xian Yuanyao thought about it and felt that what he said made sense. There are many officials in the DPRK, and each department will inevitably have one or two moths. As long as those moths are cleaned out, most of them will actually be loyal ministers. Although Xiejin has achieved success at a young age, he will not unscrupulously make things difficult for everyone just because of his divine favor. Loyal ministers who are conscientious and responsible should still get along well with each other. After all, they will all be colleagues in the future. After breakfast, The two went to the quiet back garden together and walked along the corridor for a while. Xiejin sat down on a bench in the garden. The warm autumn sun makes people feel comfortable all over. Dressed in a snow-white flowing light robe, the young man just leaned quietly in the warm sunshine, with a contented expression and a handsome and picturesque face. Xian Yuanyao stared at it for a while, and couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Jin. Huh? Xiejin turned to look at him, with a playful smile on his lips. Is Yao Yao fascinated by my beauty? Xian Yuanyao's face was slightly ashamed, but he felt that he could not lose to Xiejin's shamelessness every time, so he suppressed the heat in his heart and calmly walked to sit next to him. Slowly raising his hand to lift Xiejin's chin, Xian Yuanyao looked at her for a while like a playboy teasing a decent woman. It is indeed so beautiful that it makes people feel unbearable. Xiejin pursed his lips, then, I hope the young master will take pity on you. Xian Yuanyao's heart palpitations deepened, and there was a strange heat wave rolling over him layer by layer. Yao Yao Xiejin saw some signs and said tentatively, the sun is so beautiful today. Should we do something to live up to this wonderful weather? Do something? Xian Yuanyao thought to himself that he really should do something. Although he was always trying to be brave and clamoring, he knew in his heart that this relationship was hard won. The psychological obstacles and real obstacles had been overcome. They should indeed do something to vent their inner joy. Looking up at Xiejin's delicate eyebrows, Xian Yuanyao said after a while, let me go and study it tonight. Xiejin twitched the corner of his mouth, pulled down his hand, took him into his arms, and blocked his lips. What are you studying? I'll teach you. Xian Yuanyao subconsciously broke away from his grip. Xiejin, please pay attention to the impact. There is no one here. Xiejin chuckled softly, don't worry, they are all very knowledgeable. Xian Yuanyao frowned. Xiejin smiled at him and used his beauty trick without any scruples. Xian Yuanyao actually still wanted to struggle. It's just that Xiejin's beauty was too lethal, and Xian Yuanyao's whole body was numb with a charming look, and he was completely unable to resist. Then they heard a gust of wind whistling past their ears, and in an instant the two of them had returned to the bedroom they had just left. Xian Yuanyao's heart was beating like thunder, and he couldn't help but remind Xiejin again, don't forget dash. Everything happened naturally and naturally. The sun shines through the window. The curtains hanging in front of the bed obscured the spring scenery in the room. The lovemaking lasted for a long time. After the intense exercise, the two of them were sweating all over. They lay quietly on the bed and were unwilling to move. Their slightly messy hair was wet with sweat and had a bit of moisture. Especially Xian Yuanyao, who was weak all over and his voice was hoarse. Xiejin. Xiejin squinted like a satiated fox, and his voice was lazy and smiling. Yao Yao. Xian Yuanyao tilted his head to look at him, moved his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but he really couldn't think of what to say for a while. It seems a little wrong. What's wrong? Xiejin was puzzled. What does Yao Yao want to say? Habit. Xian Yuanyao seemed to be falling apart, too tired to talk, and closed his eyes. I want to sleep for a while. Yao Yao, let's go take a shower first. Xiejin stood up. I'm sweating all over, it will be refreshing and comfortable to take a shower before going to bed. Xian Yuanyao hummed, his voice hoarse, carry me. Xiejin curled his lips, yes, sir. I don't know whether he regretted his insistence or accepted his fate. Xian Yuanyao cooperated with Xiejin throughout the whole process and washed him from head to toe. The bed was changed into a clean set of bedding, and Xian Yuanyao went back to bed and slept soundly. Xiejin lay on the side, supporting his forehead to look at the elegant young man in front of him. His eyebrows and eyes were full of gentleness and joy. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 660. It was already night when he woke up again. Xian Yuanyao was awakened by the smell of food. When he opened his eyes, he saw Xiejin's handsome face and the extremely gentle smile on his lips. Yao Yao. Xian Yuanyao looked at him expressionlessly. Yao Yao. Xiejin kissed his face. Get up and eat. The intense exercise consumed his physical strength, and he urgently needed to replenish his nutrition due to his sore waist, so Xiejin ordered people to prepare a table of sumptuous delicacies. Now he just had to wait for Xian Yuanyao to get up, wash up, change clothes and eat. However, Xian Yuanyao just lay quietly on the bed, looking at Xiejin's face, as if a flower suddenly grew on his face. The extremely calm eyes made Xiejin's whole body go numb. Yao Yao. Xian Yuanyao had no expression. He tried to move his body, and an indescribable pain came. He looked at Xiejin's face, which seemed fine. His expression was so gentle, like a fox that had succeeded. Xian Yuanyao picked up the pillow on the bed and threw it at him. Get out. Xiejin was shocked. Yao Yao. Get out of here. Xian Yuanyao was angry and annoyed. Liar. Get away. Xiejin hurriedly comforted. Yao Yao, I was wrong. Dead fox, stinky fox, you damn fox. I will never believe you again. Yao Yao, I was really wrong. Xiejin comforted softly, feeling very distressed, or I'll let you beat me up to vent your anger. Kneel down. What? Xiejin was surprised. Yao Yao. Xian Yuanyao's face turned red with anger. Kneel down. Xiejin blinked and wanted to struggle again, but when he met Xian Yuanyao's eyes that were obviously not happy, he coughed lightly and knelt down obediently beside the bed. The second rule of the family rules is that Xiejin must follow the lead of her husband Xian Yuanyao and obey him without disobeying. Pass on the family rules. Husband, calm down. The family rules have not been prepared yet. Xiejin wanted to laugh but didn't dare to laugh. He lowered his eyes and said, what kind of tools does Yao Yao like? Xian Yuanyao was angry. The word husband sounded so ironic at this time that he wanted to peel off his fox skin. I want a whip. It would be best if he could whip off several layers of his skin and make him cry for his parents. When we return to the capital, I will prepare a few more whips for Yao Yao to use. Xiejin's voice was soft. Yao Yao can beat you however he wants. Xian Yuanyao's face was tense and his eyes were cold. I have asked people to prepare a lot of delicious food. Let's eat first. Xiejin coaxed him. Is Yao Yao hungry? Xian Yuanyao slowly sat up, resisting the discomfort of his body, and said in a light tone, I don't think you need to eat. Well, eating Yao Yao will make you full. Xiejin replied in his heart, but he didn't dare to show any strange emotions on his face, nor did he defend himself. He just lowered his eyebrows and put on his shoes for him, and then said, then Yao Yao eats, I'll just watch you eat. Xian Yuanyao stared at him coldly, thinking to himself, who is he showing such a pitiful look at this time? Who doesn't know that this cunning guy is cruel by nature? Fortunately, he trusted him so much. Yao Yao. Xian Yuanyao snorted coldly, got up, dressed and washed. Turning his head to look out the window, it was already dark. He couldn't help but say coldly, this life is simply upside down day and night. Xiejin, you are really good. Xiejin was silent. Regarding the upside down day and night, he really felt that he was innocent. He also agreed to that in the morning, just because he moved a little too hard, and ignored him when he begged for mercy. He wanted to see him being tortured to the point of tears in his eyes, and Yao Yao's red eyes really made him love him to the core, so he couldn't help but lose control a little. So, well, after all, it was the first time, he should be gentler. Yao Yao probably felt a lot of pain, so he was so irritable after waking up. Xiejin thought it was understandable. Isn't it normal that it's dark after sleeping? Is this also his fault? Xiejin felt very wronged, but he didn't dare to say that he was wronged. After all, he was the one who tasted the sweetness, and it was normal for Yao Yao to be a little irritable. Xian Yuanyao sat stiffly at the table, looking at the delicious food, and then at Xiahuli, who was still kneeling beside the bed. His heart had actually softened, but he just couldn't lose face. After all, he always thought that he was proud and strong-willed, and would not beg for mercy even if his bones were broken. However, he was tortured in bed and couldn't help but show weakness. The damned Huli still went his own way and even got worse. This is intolerable. Xian Yuanyao, who had lost all his face and dignity, secretly decided that he would never let him go so easily. Yao Yao, I just made the tea on the table for you. Try it. Xiejin spoke in a gentle tone with unignorable care. Rest for a while after eating. I'll get you anything you need. Xian Yuanyao didn't want to pay attention to him. Xiejin sighed faintly, kneeling alone beside the bed, looking really lonely. Xian Yuanyao couldn't help but glance at him, and he couldn't help but get angry after glancing at him. Isn't he usually very smooth? He is good at speaking and can even make the dead alive. Why is he dumb now? After being angry for a while, Xian Yuanyao felt that he was too hypocritical. Isn't it just a trivial matter? It will happen sooner or later anyway, and although it does hurt a little, didn't Xiejin stand up for him to take the military stick in Huainan, and he also felt pain? It seems that he is the only one who is delicate. Thinking like this, he couldn't help but think of all the good things Xiejin had done for him. His heart softened and he said fiercely, "Wait for me to feed you." Xiejin suddenly raised his eyes. "Yao Yao." Xian Yuanyao snorted coldly. Although there was nothing to be angry about, he had indeed been eaten up by him. He had lost all his face and dignity. How could he regain his position as the head of the family in the future? The actions of occasionally reinforcing the husband's authority these days seemed to be a complete joke at this moment. The more Xian Yuanyao thought about it, the angrier he became, and he wanted to scratch the wall. However, even if he had never been in contact with men and women, he couldn't really know nothing after growing up. Anyway, in the end, he was willing, and no one forced him. He was just fooled by Xie Fox. Besides, after all, even if he was unwilling to admit it, Xiejin did bear more of this relationship, and he was also very affectionate to him. The more he thought about it, the more entangled he became. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that he was hypocritical, like a woman. Xian Yuanyao was thinking about finding an excuse to forgive Xiejin, but he still felt a little upset and secretly hated Xiejin's cunning. Yao Yao. Xiejin sat beside him and picked up a piece of fish for him with chopsticks. "Let's have dinner and supper together, and we can go to the roof to enjoy the moon after dinner." The moon is romantic and poetic. Xian Yuanyao frowned when he said this. "What day is it today?"